G'day. How are we all? I decided to go the full mayo mammy today. I had just made up my mind a few days ago to start searching out tenor sets. These are tenor sets. A tenor set is a cup and saucer, but a saucer that is so large you can manage it with one hand, you see. Well, tenor sets because you can go and play a lovely game of tennis, the tennis club, and then come in for afternoon tea, stand around and chatting with people politely without having to manage a cup of tea and a side plate with fantasies on. You have it all in one, you see. So I had just made up my mind to look for them because I used to have, well, I still do, I suppose, several in Australia, which is 10,000 miles away from me. I haven't seen them very often over in Ireland, but blow me down. I went to a charity shop the other day and there's a set of 4 of them. I think they're probably, judging from the sort of like knockoff Corningware from Japan about the 1960s. I think there's 4 of them and they're absolutely glorious. Red and green like my kitchen for mayo. And this is a cherry cream cake from O'Hare's Bakery. And I'm going to take a bite because I'm shamelessly pandering to my audience. You see, our society, well, where I come from in Australia, at the time that I grew up, I was born in 1970. At the time I grew up in Australia, women had such an unhealthy relationship with their body and food that it wasn't often they would allow themselves to be seen eating anything nice, as in the way of cakes or anything, in public, without sort of thinking, as I have been conditioned to do my whole life, that people must be thinking, well, no wonder she's so fat. Look at the shit she's eating. It's sexist, misogynist. It doesn't take into account anything like genetics or the fact that if you have lipedema, as I do, then I could live on carrot sticks and water and I'm still going to look exactly the same way. I won't feel as good, so I don't eat a lot of this sort of thing, but I still feel that I'm planting my feet and standing my ground and eating a cake online, which is the most public performance you can make nowadays, is in its own very way a radical feminist statement of reclaiming my own space on this planet with my own body. So yes, I'm not going to eat the whole thing only because it's huge. I couldn't possibly finish the whole thing. Well, also, I was brought up different manners. I'm yet to see an Irish person cover their mouth when they yawn or chew, which I suppose is my own hang-ups, culturally speaking. It's quite a shocking thing to be presented by all those sudden gaping gobs. That yawning is definitely, a communal thing. Someone yawns, the entire room goes off in a series of yawns like lions to wake up your brain. It really is a crowd thing. And imagine a room full of Irish people, like the first one doesn't cover his mouth and he yawns, and everyone else suddenly opens it. It's like suddenly being in the cage with hippos. Yummy cake, by the way. It's sort of like in Australia, we sort of call it a custard slice, I suppose, vanilla slice, but it's got cherries and cream. Mm-hmm. Incredibly sweet. Yummy. I can't eat the whole thing. I will finish it later, but I can't eat the whole thing one sitting. I have my limits. I was sort of doing this sort of shamelessly pandering to my audience. I'm not really. I'm just always amused by the search terms in my channel analytics, like what people put in to find me. And sometimes it is BBW, FD, which is the opposite of feminism, because it is women who are overweight to the point where their health is compromised, eating highly processed, unhealthy junk food on the orders of men who are getting off on it. It's kind of like the worst sub-dom torture you can really go through, really. But there's a difference between recognizing that there's a market in men who appreciate curves, and also to emancipate women from the unrealistic expectations placed upon us by mass Hollywood propaganda and magazines. Like most of the beauty magazines and big glossies are owned by like evil old men like Rupert Murdoch, who buys himself trophy wife after trophy wife. The latest being Jerry Hall, who's made a career out of being a trophy wife. But most people don't look like Jerry Hall, nor should they feel they should have to. It's like living on cocaine and champagne. Might suit Jerry Hall, but it doesn't suit most people's lifestyles, really, does it? Like, oh, crack out the moe. Just going to do a bit of hoovering. It doesn't really translate, does it? But anyway, everyone's body is different. Everyone's body reacts differently to different kinds of foods. I have to admit, I have not been as good as I could have been lately. I lapsed from my anti-inflammatory diet around Halloween. Oh, go on then, Halloween. I'll just have a few chocolates. And now it's like there's fruit mince pies in the feckin' shops, aren't there? Bloody cold outside. It's really hard to get enthusiastic about salad when it's 2 degrees. So, however, vegetable stews in general, meat and 2 veg winter warmers. That's perfectly healthy. It was like I might make this cake sort of my last hurrah. I know I've said it before, but I really do need to get back on the straight and narrow, as it were, and kick the old sugar. Once upon a time, I would have eaten the whole thing in one sitting and probably looked around for another one. Now I'm sort of thinking, I got to the point where I wonder how I ever did it, really. I used to have to drink a pint of cream because when I was in my 20s, I used to read a lot of Agatha Christie. I had all of the Agatha Christie novels, and including her autobiography and a couple of others. And in her autobiography, she described how she used to go to her tennis club and drink a pint of cream while her husband, who was very fit and played a lot of tennis, that sort of thing. She'd sit around, because she was from Devon and Cornwall, drinking a pint of clotted cream, basically. So I did it to see if I could. To my surprise, I could. I could take a whole pint of cream in my 20s. Was how unhealthy my diet was. Now, cream isn't actually that bad for you if it's nice grass-fed, organic, sort of, natural stuff, and that cows are treated ethically. Cream isn't that bad for you. And the good thing about Ireland, I've noticed, when you're in Australia, I was thinking about this the other day. In Australia, there's this, in Western Australia, there's a chain of tea shops called Miss Maud's and restaurants. And it's a Swedish food. It's started by a woman called Maud, and she started like a hotel with a restaurant in it with a smorgasbord. And it's amazing. Just like tables absolutely heaving with all sorts of food and very rich Swedish desserts like the princess cake and marzipan aplenty. But when you go to one of her little like franchise cafes in the big malls, at least the way it used to be pre-COVID, pre-everything, you go in and you say, oh look, I'll have the salad. I'll have the salad and I'll have a cake and a cup of tea. Yeah, okay, you have to order at the counter. There's no such thing as table service. And then they go, okay, 15-year-old on like £7 an hour goes off. They come back and they're like immediately like they plunk down on your table in sulky fashion, like a slice of cake with a big froth of like the cream that comes out of the nitrous plunger. So it's all like fluffy and lovely and big swirl. But of course I don't want to eat the cake with the cream before I get a fucking salad. So it just sits there waiting for the salad, which is made fresh, to arrive. And by the time the salad arrives and it's the artificial cream out of the we call them nangs. We use like the nitrous oxide. People used to get the pellets and like suck them. The nangs that go in the dispenser for the cream. By the time you finish your salad and went to pick up the cake, there's just like a pool of like processed sugar and sort of skim milk like swirling around on the plate. Where the cake now sits in a puddle of this sort of like insipid, milky mess that used to be artificially whipped cream. By the time you finish your salad, because they're a franchise and they're on a time limit, they don't have time to bring you your salad first and then the cake. There's like they're taking the money for the cake. It's like they've cut the cake. They don't want to have to keep it behind the counter. They're cluttering up. So you've got to sit on your table until you finish your salad. Whereas in Ireland, they actually use real cream. Like they get real cream from real cows and then they whip it. So it stays whipped. So you could actually get the cake at the same time as your salad in Ireland. By the time you finish your salad, although they'd bring you a side of chips just to be sure that you weren't, you will. You will. We went out for late breakfast today for brunch, and although the Fenian said no chips, they still brought a basket of chips because they just don't believe you. They just think you're just trying to be good, but they leave you. You must want it really, particularly on a cold day like today. All the chips were ate, which brings me back to life, being led astray and off the straight and narrow. But it's so fucking cold outside. It's hard to get excited about salad. Right, I'm still not going to eat the whole thing though. And lemon and ginger tea. And I need to put my glasses on. My Eurosaver magnifying glasses, so I look like goggly. Need to check the time. I need to go off. I just thought I'd pop on, have a chat, and tell you that I was brave again, back on the road again on Monday night. I drove all the way to Dublin and back by myself and attended the Ricky Gervais gig at 3 Arena, which was fabulous. It was a fabulous gig, and Ricky Gervais was hilarious. But again, I was by myself, and I have a loud laugh. I know I have a loud laugh. It's a somewhat eccentric laugh, you might say. So when I start to laugh, I go, ha! I start for that, ha! Before I giggle, right? But of course, whenever Ricky Gervais says something hilarious, I'd go, ah! And then people the strangers sitting either side of me, there was a chair either side of me, but we're all packed in. There's 3,000 of us in 3 Arena. We're all queued outside, masks on, COVID vaccines ready on our phones to show, and photo ID, because there's no point having the vax cert without the matching ID, and masks, queuing just to get into the stadium, 3 Arena. And then we get in there and everyone's still got the masks on in the foyer and everyone's going off to buy the booze and their popcorn and whatever. And they're being seated and all the ushers have got masks on. So we're all like going like, and I'm squinting going like, look, seat 3G or whatever the heck it was. And one thing I've learned about Dublin and ushers, very few, they must just hire them on in the afternoon. And none of them have got a clue. So you ask them, they go, yeah, I think it's down there. You ask that fella, he knows. And that fella down there will send you to someone else who doesn't know either. He'll send you to someone else. They just get keeping handballed until finally you end up with the only person who's been there for 50 years and they'll put you in the right seat. Anyway, we all get seated. By the time Ricky Gervais comes on stage, everyone's got their masks off. I'm sitting there thinking, I'm looking around like no one's wearing their mask. We all had to use vaccine passports and stuff to get in. Here we are. Okay, fine. I'll sit here without my mask on. And then at the end of the performance, the security, the bouncers and ushers all came yelled at us to put them back on again to go back outside. So we all had to put masks on from our seat to the front door of the foyer. And as soon as everyone was out in the street, all the masks were off again. And everyone's mingling in the crowd. They make their way to the crowd, to make their way to the same train station. And I thought, this is madness. COVID is real. I don't object to following regulations, but these regulations are mad. So it seems that the vaccine provides resistance, not immunity, and it doesn't stop the spread. So masks are almost redundant if you're going to have them off while you're in the, if we sat there with them all on, if we'd sat there with our masks on for the performance, I wouldn't have minded. I would have understood. But it makes no sense to sit there and 3,000 people all cheek to jowl with our masks off for a couple of hours and then put them back on to go outside. Half of that audience could have COVID and not even know about it yet because they might not have the symptoms yet. Because end of the school holidays, like August, my unvaccinated 10-year-old caught COVID from her vaccinated grandparent who lives in a different household than us. And then she didn't know she was sick yet. Within a couple of days, she then gave it to a vaccinated aunt who lives in another different household. So it's 3 different people from 3 different households, only one of whom was unvaccinated because it was a child, and children weren't vaccinated. But the 2 that were vaccinated caught it, and luckily they weren't very ill with it. So obviously it does provide resistance, it stops you dying. I'm not saying don't get vaccinated, but I'm just saying obviously it doesn't slow the spread. So keep your masks on if you're in big gatherings. You'd think. But we didn't. No one didn't. It wasn't a requirement. It makes no sense. You can see why people aren't obeying, because it's just contradictions and turns everywhere. He's hoping we don't go into another lockdown for Christmas. I don't think they will, only because no one is going to pay any attention to it. If they do, no one will obey it, and it will cost too much to enforce it, I think. Be riots. Besides which, they want to spend money at Christmas. They want everyone to spend money at Christmas. And they don't want them to spend cash at Christmas. They want to spend credit cards or debit cards, contactless society, so they know where we were and what we were spending. 3 Arena was contactless. If I'd taken 50 quid, I couldn't have spent it. And the Fenian took the kid to Central Parks a few weeks back. That was cashless as well. And somewhere else. So it's just cash has always been dirty. Cash has always been covered in Legionnaire's disease and salmonella and filth and whatever. It's not going to spread COVID any more than any other thing is. COVID's real, but it is being used as social engineering. There's no fucking doubt about it. Hang on to your cash and use it for as long as you can, because they are just trying to keep tabs on you. Absolutely. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but come on now. I call bullshit on the no cash economy. They're just trying to keep everyone regulated and know where the tab, keep tabs on where your money is and where you're spending it and how you're spending it. They're bringing the cards next, where you can you'll still get the PUP, but it'll be in the card form, and you'll only be able to spend it at their mega donors department stores instead of like little charity shops or, farmers markets and things. You mark my words. Which is why we should all aim for self-sustainability as much as possible. The less reliance we have on corporations, the better. Grow your own veg. Learn how to fucking sew. I should talk, I can't, but you know what I mean. Just make do for a bit. You don't need half the shit you buy, and especially don't need half the shit you buy from China. It's only going to end up in landfill with plastic crap. Might stop buying from China, and they will be, we'll all be better off. So will the planet. All right, I'm going to go off into Wild Blue Yonder. Thank you for joining me for my tea and cake. And I'll see you. Good afternoon. I'm Mama Duck. I'm on Spotify with Owen Colgan, Nevermind Buzzducks, and my own podcast, Finding Ireland Funny, is on Spotify. That also has Mr. Owen Colgan on it. And check out my other videos, like, subscribe, and all that sort of bizzo. I'm terribly, terribly grateful. Oh, and I'm on Patreon. Links in my bio. See you in the afternoon.